A digital ghost holds all the secrets now. Detectives finally tracked down her missing smartwatch. Did she have it on when she vanished? Absolutely. The thing is strapped to her wrist in basically every surviving picture. You know the shots. Lounging on the Soulmate's deck, soaking up that golden Bahamian sun out by the Abaco Islands. She looks genuinely happy. Look closely at her left arm, though that device is practically glued to her while boating. Darlene Hamlet, Lynette's own mother, actually got off a call with a United States Coast Guard official who delivered some massive news. They recovered the tracker. That piece of tech holds vital clues. Quick disclaimer though, police haven't filed any criminal charges against Brian Hooker regarding his wife vanishing, and he insists he's innocent. His defense lawyer made that completely clear to everyone. Also, law enforcement hasn't officially published whatever metrics got pulled from this device yet. So we are going to break down exactly how these gadgets track human behavior, plus the specific mysteries this hardware might solve right now. Anyone obsessed with this mystery from day one knows her maritime background. The woman was basically a master out on the ocean waves. Talking to the Associated Press, Darlene explained how her daughter practically lived on lakes growing up. They were a massive boating family. She even mentioned how comfortable her kid always felt out there, way more than your average person ever would. Over on CBS News, Carly Ellsworth talked about her mom's 10+ years navigating boats. She painted a picture of a phenomenal swimmer, somebody who absolutely never lost her cool when bad weather hit. None of it makes logical sense. My mother stayed incredibly active. Why on earth would she swim away from safety? And what was she doing with the ignition key? The entire narrative just feels completely wrong. Plus, you have to remember that Brian and Lynette spent more than 10 years meticulously filming their maritime lifestyle. You could find them everywhere, Facebook, YouTube, all over the internet as the Sailing Hookers. They built a massive video diary of their ocean travels. Spot that smart band in every single clip. She honestly wore that thing like a second life vest out there. It wasn't just cute jewelry. It logged her daily routines and recorded her biological rhythms. Everywhere she traveled, it followed. And that is exactly why Darlene's interview on Ashley Banfield's Drop Dead Serious podcast completely flipped this entire case upside down. She casually dropped a bombshell about getting a personal ring from a United States Coast Guard agent. He called to say they finally secured her daughter's missing wearable. This wasn't just vague gossip. An actual federal agent gave her the official word about discovering the device. Darlene wasn't making wild guesses or spreading some crazy internet theory here. A legitimate insider working the active case fed her those exact details, and she boldly went public. The one thing she freely admitted she didn't know, where exactly they pulled the gadget from. But they definitely secured it. Like, she flat out said she had zero clue about the physical location, just that police definitely have it. She couldn't pinpoint the exact spot. Detectives are keeping that detail totally hidden from the press anyway. Still, the actual recovery is real. The physical hardware definitely exists. Getting that definitive scoop directly from law enforcement gave her family some serious validation. So let's drop this recovered device right into the messy timeline detectives are currently struggling to piece together. Saturday night, April 4th, 2026. According to Brian's official statement, the couple departed Hopetown's Abaco Inn riding a tiny 8-foot rigid inflatable boat. They supposedly headed toward their main vessel anchored nearby. Brian claims things got incredibly choppy, a dramatic story his lawyer insists he hasn't backed down from even once. He says violent wind gusts tossed their tiny skiff around, causing her to fall overboard. Police are definitely tearing apart his very next claim. It is his entire excuse for why he couldn't just turn around and pull her out. Bahamian authorities officially publicized his version of events, noting that Lynette supposedly had the motor's safety strap attached to her when she plummeted into the waves. Think of that lanyard as an emergency brake. If whoever is driving gets suddenly tossed from the vessel, the cord aggressively rips away from the console and instantly kills the engine power dead. Plunging into the dark waves, she dragged the cord along. The motor completely shut down. That left Brian stranded in pitch blackness, bouncing around in an 8-foot shell without any working motor or sensible way to drive back toward her. An audio leak caught him telling a buddy how he helplessly floated around, desperately rowing with a single paddle for 7 solid hours until hitting another island's distant beach. Drifting into Marsh Harbor Boatyard before dawn on April 5th, he finally sounded the alarm about his missing wife. Local authorities slapped cuffs on him quickly. Interrogators grilled the guy for days before cutting him loose without charges on April 14th, 2026. Terrell Butler, his defense lawyer, went on record stating his client completely rejects any criminal accusations whatsoever. He fiercely denies causing her death. The guy supposedly keeps asking about her status, holding on to hope that rescue teams will bring her home. Bahamian officials claimed freeing him was a joint move with public prosecutors. They actually advised against filing formal criminal charges for the moment, choosing to hold off pending further results. They need more evidence. 4 tiny words carry the immense weight of whatever happens next, At this time, the case remains totally open. Meanwhile, the United States Coast Guard runs a parallel criminal probe that remains entirely active right now. And locked away inside some evidence room sits that smart device. People act like these wearables are just fancy pedometers. Wrong. Slapping one of these things on your arm basically creates a relentless biological surveillance system. The gadget doesn't sit around waiting for you to hit start on a gym session. You never push a button. From the second you clasp it on at dawn, it logs everything. Here is exactly what this hardware quietly captures in the background without asking. Your pulse. That tiny glass sensor underneath runs on a specific medical technology known as photoplethysmography. It blasts green LED rays straight into your arm, then it literally calculates how much illumination gets absorbed by the blood pumping through your veins. During a heartbeat, your circulation spikes. During the rest periods, it drops off. The hardware reads every fluctuation. It actively tracks your pulse at steady intervals all day long. Whenever you suddenly start moving aggressively or exercising, it logs that data even faster. Forget rough estimates we are talking about, down to the millisecond tracking for every single twitch and sudden acceleration. Inside that tiny watch sits a 3-axis accelerometer perfectly synced up with a precise gyroscope. Together they catch absolutely everything. Your steps hard, falls, sudden speed shifts, or violent impacts. It totally knows the difference between a casual walk, a sprint, swimming, or hitting the ground. And if you freeze completely out of nowhere, it logs that dead stop plus your exact location. Any version with built-in GPS starting right from Series 3 onward can track your exact coordinates anywhere in the world without needing an iPhone nearby. It literally builds a shadow map of your movements, cross-referencing locations against your biological timeline. Then there is blood oxygen. Starting with Series 6, the device actually measures your SPO saturation, the exact percentage of oxygen pumping through your red blood cells. Normal resting rates sit somewhere between 95 and 100%. But if those levels tank, suddenly the hardware catches that shift immediately. You do not even have to do anything for it to log this silently. Now let us talk water immersion. Series 2 and newer models pack a water lock. The second those sensors realize they are completely submerged, that protective mode kicks in automatically. It slaps a precise timestamp on the exact second water hits. The database logs the submersion permanently. Here is the absolute kicker when turning this data into hard evidence. That little watch on your wrist, it does not actually keep all those files locked away locally. It constantly syncs. The minute it gets within 33 feet of a paired iPhone via Bluetooth, every piece of activity quietly transfers over. From there, everything blasts straight to iCloud. Everything sits securely in an encrypted cloud vault connected directly to the user's Apple ID. For homicide detectives, this completely changes the game. Say the device takes a brutal beating or sits at the bottom of the ocean soaking in salt water. It honestly does not matter at all. Whatever synced to the iPhone right before that water hit is probably completely intact, safe on the actual phone, and quietly waiting up in the cloud. Detectives working this specific case actually hold the devices packing all that synced history. Bahamian authorities already served a search warrant on Brian Hooker's yacht Soulmate. According to court filings checked by CBS News, that warrant authorized the police to seize a digital video rig. They also grabbed tablets and mobile gear, suspecting those exact electronics held critical proof about a missing person and severe bodily harm. If the iPhone connected to Lynette's watch was hiding on that boat, authorities absolutely bagged it under that exact same warrant. The device holding all her secrets, her exact steps, wild heart rate spikes, final movements, and the exact second water hit that phone is currently sitting in an evidence locker. Look, we are not just talking theories here. This isn't some crazy sci-fi thought experiment about what smart tech might pull off in future trials. Wearable fitness data is actively being shown to juries right now. Prosecutors already use it to completely rip apart sketchy stories husbands tell about their missing wives. Take this landmark trial in Australia, for instance. A victim's smartwatch stats built a rock-solid forensic timeline that completely destroyed a suspected killer's fake alibi. Tick by tick, capturing everything from the initial violent ambush right up to her very final recorded heartbeat. Before we break down the Lynette Hooker mystery, you absolutely need to hear about two massive precedents. Back in December 2015, someone shot and killed a Connecticut woman named Connie DeBate right inside her Ellington house. Richard. DeBate, the husband, spun a crazy story for the cops about a masked burglar breaking in, executing his wife, and tying him up. He handed detectives a mapped-out timeline. He swore he knew her exact time of death, but he forgot one crucial detail. Connie was wearing her Fitbit fitness tracker that deadly morning. Detectives pulled those digital logs, and guess what? She was actively walking around her home for over a full hour after Richard insisted she was already a corpse. That little device quietly logged her steps, her pacing, every bit of physical exertion, and those cold numbers completely blew his fake timeline to shreds. By May 2022, Richard DeBate was fully convicted of murder. He caught a brutal 65-year prison sentence. The Connecticut Supreme Court backed the verdict entirely. That little Fitbit was essentially the prosecution's absolute star witness. Just a year later, in September 2016, police discovered 57-year-old Myrna Nilsson dead inside her laundry room down in Valley View, a quiet Adelaide suburb. Caroline Nilsson, the daughter-in-law, claimed that some random thugs followed Myrna home after a road rage clash, argued outside for 20 minutes, and then brutally murdered her. Caroline insisted she got tied up and gagged, so she missed the whole attack. But prosecutors realized Myrna's smartwatch was practically screaming a completely different truth. It logged a sudden, violent spike in physical activity. Prosecutors easily identified this pattern as the terrifying biological signature of a total surprise ambush. Right after that spike, everything completely flatlined. By exactly 6:41 p.m., the onboard heart monitor went entirely dark, recording absolutely nothing else. Lawyers proved the violent assault triggered near 6:38 p.m., and Myrna was definitely gone by 6:45 p.m. Start to finish, that fatal window lasted under 7 minutes flat. Remember Caroline's story? She told the cops the outside argument lasted roughly 20 whole minutes before the murder. But the tech proved her wrong. From the initial panic spike to the very last recorded pulse, the whole nightmare wrapped up in under 7 minutes. The state practically built their whole case on that watch. It became the ultimate smoking gun to prove the suspect was straight up lying to detectives. She actually faced 2 separate trials. A deadlocked jury hung the 2020 case, and then by 2021, a second jury shockingly acquitted her. Prosecutors walked away instead of pushing a third round. Still, that final verdict doesn't erase the absolute forensic bombshell the smartwatch dropped in court. That digital footprint survived ruthless cross-examinations. Defense lawyers attacked it, tech experts dissected it, and multiple juries stared it down, yet the data held strong through 2 massive criminal proceedings. So if you're wondering whether wearable biometric stats can actually lock in as cold hard murder evidence, the debate is completely over. It totally can, and it absolutely has. That biometric data pulled off M&A Nelson's wrist. It built a timeline so incredibly precise that it just completely destroyed the suspect's courtroom defense. That precedent matters immensely for the Lynette Hooker case. Ashley Banfield basically nailed it on drop dead serious. Smartwatches simply do not lie. Finding her watch just flipped this entire investigation. Honestly, this hardware will scream the truth. Smartwatches never fake the numbers. It directly challenges every single claim Brian made about April 4th. Right here is exactly where the mystery gets cracked wide open. Let us break down his account carefully. Not to judge him or jump the gun on a verdict. We are doing this because that tiny screen holds the literal receipts that will either back up his story or destroy it entirely. You absolutely deserve to see exactly how his spoken words match against the digital footprint. Brian told the cops and a buddy on a recorded call that eventually leaked online that the 2 of them walked out of the Abaco Inn together on the evening of April 4th. They hopped into this tiny 8-foot dinghy, just a basic open boat for quick runs to a bigger ship. Their main yacht Soulmate was anchored nearby. That was their final stop. It should have been a short ride, but he claims the weather went to hell. Nasty wind gusts and serious chop. He claims she went over the side. And here is his reason for why a rescue was impossible. She was wearing the motor safety lanyard, the literal kill switch. When she hit the waves, that cord went with her. The engine died instantly, leaving Brian stranded in pitch blackness on an 8-foot boat in crazy seas with 1 oar. He explained to Blaine Stevenson during an infamous taped call later given to CNN that he spent 7 straight hours helplessly drifting and paddling before finally bumping into another island. His last memory, he claims she was actively swimming toward the beach. He finally tied up at the Marsh Harbor Boatyard early on April 5th. That was when he reported her missing. So that is the official story. Now let us match his timeline against the hardware. Brian says the rough water took her overboard. Well, that smartwatch logs the exact millisecond it hits water using its automatic waterlock tools to instantly stamp a time on the plunge. If she had that band strapped on when she went under the tech, locked in, the exact moment Brian claims this happened on April 4th, these things never sleep. They continuously track your pulse and your movement all day long. Detectives can just extract that log and pinpoint every single major physical reaction her body went through that night, down to the absolute second. Say her pulse shot through the roof from sheer panic or freezing water. That massive spike is sitting right there in the data. Or what if all movement stopped dead like when a person stops fighting? The sensors caught that too. Remember, Brian swore the rip currents pulled them apart fast. The GPS quietly tracked her exact coordinates, assuming she still had it strapped on when she splashed down. Even if the signal only caught a tiny fraction of her route before dropping service, the cops now possess a hard geographic marker to check against where Brian said they were and where the watch washed up. The husband claims he fought the current for 7 agonizing hours before making landfall. But look, his own smartphone definitely logged some sort of history during those 7 hours. This creates a completely separate digital trail that the forensic team can use to verify his story. But there is another massive piece of this puzzle. Brian vividly remembers watching her actively swim toward the coastline. In his version of events, she survived the initial fall and was totally mobile in the water. She was intentionally powering toward a specific target. If that tech was hugging her wrist, it was logging every single heartbeat and arm stroke. Experts can easily look at the readouts to see if there is a long stretch of exertion matching a desperate swimmer, or if her vitals tell a completely different story. Banfield called it a digital popcorn trail, or a health popcorn trail. Every single heartbeat drops a little kernel. Every satellite ping is a kernel. Every swim stroke leaves one too. You follow the trail until it finally stops. The real million-dollar question keeping detectives awake is where her path actually finished. And does it match up with her husband's story? This specific gap is exactly where the raw power of smartwatch forensics shines the brightest, shifting this stuff from basic tech right into hardcore criminal evidence. There are incredibly specific questions being asked here, because falling into freezing water does not just create one generic heartbeat pattern. Forensic experts know exactly how to read these variations, mostly because they have watched it play out in plenty of real-world trials. Think about it. When you suddenly plunge into pitch-black freezing waves, your nervous system absolutely freaks out in what doctors literally call a cold shock response. Your pulse explodes, blood pressure hits the roof, your body just violently forces a gasp. Your lungs suck in air, ignoring whether your mouth is actually above the waves. It is pure instinct. You cannot fight it or train it away. Since that gadget tracks your pulse, by the exact second it captures that massive spike flawlessly. After that initial shock, the numbers either start to level out if the person begins swimming, or they crash into a completely different rhythm, entirely. If someone is knocked out or helpless out there, maybe from injury, maybe the freezing temps locked up their muscles, the sensors pick up a massive shift in movement. The accelerometer throws off a totally different signature than regular swimming. It actually knows the difference between someone fighting to survive and a body drifting totally still. Assuming she was wearing the band when she hit the ocean, and the cops are pretty sure she was, they can easily pull the logs to see exactly what her heart and arms did next. Did she actually spend a long chunk of time kicking toward the beach? Or did the device record a much more sinister pattern? In that famous Australian case with Nelson, experts read a massive spike in motion that crashed into nothingness, giving prosecutors a brutal 7-minute timeline to completely destroy the killer's alibi in front of a live jury. This isn't just some theory about tech. This is hard proof, quite literally tested under brutal cross-examinations in front of real courtrooms. Dead victims cannot talk, but their wrists absolutely can. According to a top US military forensic examiner who proved these everyday gadgets expose secrets that otherwise stay buried forever. It tracks exactly what happened to the person's physical body, ignoring lies and logging the raw physiological truth down to the exact second. So whatever actually went down on that tiny 8-foot dinghy out in the pitch-black Abaco Island waters on April 4th. Whatever fights led up to Lynette hitting the ocean, nobody but Brian Hooker knows the truth. We have absolutely zero dot cameras to check. No human saw anything yet. The tech strapped to her arm captured everything. Bringing a smart wearable into a murder investigation naturally triggers one massive question right away. They fished it out of the ocean, so wouldn't salt water completely destroy the evidence? Actually, no. It survives way better than you'd think, purely because of how engineers physically designed the hardware. From Series 2 onwards, they survive 50-meter dives matching the strict ISO 22810:2010 standards for scuba gear. The programmers intentionally added pool and ocean fitness tracking strictly because the exterior shell is waterproof. Ocean water destroys electronics faster than tap water. Obviously, no standard consumer gadget can survive at the sea bottom forever. Still, they survive typical liquid exposure beautifully. Plus, and this is massive biometric data, doesn't just sit trapped on your wrist, they bounce. The second it gets close enough to a paired smartphone, the wireless connection permanently saves every single heartbeat and step. From there, files shoot to the cloud, securely locking into an encrypted vault tied directly to a personal account. So if the waves completely fried the circuits later on, whatever biological metrics already jumped over to the mobile device before she drowned are perfectly safe. Detectives have a solid backup plan if the physical gadgets go missing. Cops just hand warrants to the tech giant legally seizing the remote database. With one court order, they get every exact chronological log without ever touching the actual hardware. And law enforcement here holds the absolute authority to pull it all. The smartwatch, the mobile cloud files, yacht surveillance drives, personal iPads, telecom gear, literally everything that search warrant grabbed. We aren't looking at some isolated clue. It is an entire web of digital footprints converging on one night. And honestly, the money aspect isn't just a side plot. The cash is actually the massive key to grasping exactly why the relatives and detectives are pushing this so unbelievably hard. Speaking with Ashley Banfield, Darlene Hamlet openly stated her son-in-law expected a massive payday if his wife died. Nobody has leaked the exact dollar amounts or policies regarding the death benefits yet. However, Darlene explicitly outlined the monetary incentives while chatting directly with Banfield, making sure to state this publicly under her real name on a major broadcast. His lawyer completely trashed that narrative, though. The husband swears he wasn't after the cash, firmly putting his total denial into formal sworn statements. Still, the underlying why totally dictates how experts read the physical clues. The wearables' numbers won't prove greed, but they absolutely nail down the brutal physical reality of the timeline. Intent basically steers the entire interrogation of the tech. So authorities naturally suspect a deadly cash grab, even while the widower aggressively screams his absolute undeniable innocence. Their dive into the chronological evidence becomes incredibly sharp. Does the pulse rhythm actually match a clumsy slip off the deck, or does a wild panic spike suggest a struggle that feels vastly more sinister? Did the exact second of splashing match up perfectly with his version of the night, or is there a massive gap that completely destroys his alibi? These are the real stakes. The ones and zeros will either completely clear his name or burn his story to the ground. Right this minute, serious professionals are actively hunting for those exact answers while the husband remains totally uncharged. He claims zero involvement while local island police and federal agents quietly dig through the mountain of seized materials. But beyond the sterile gadgets, there is a messy human tragedy here. Something the grieving mother has detailed with a heartbreaking, brutal honesty that really cuts incredibly deep. She confessed to the news anchor that their relationship was incredibly toxic, filled with amazing highs, but terrifyingly dark lows, admitting she spent years dreading the day she'd get that fatal phone call. The romance was apparently a massive roller coaster, where the bad days turned physically unsafe. The mom confirmed her kid actually walked out on the guy multiple times, genuinely packing up her life, and escaped. It basically followed this incredibly predictable 18 to 24-month loop where she would run back home for a few weeks before eventually caving and returning. This horrible pattern lasted right up until the final incident where he violently strangled her, leaving massive, horrific marks that she explicitly photographed so she would never forget the abuse. While hiding out of the Florida residence job hunting, he sent her a truly chilling message the next morning, literally stating he regretted not finishing her off and dumping her straight into the ocean. Mom swears he made that exact threat out on the vessel well before the 4th of April. All of this predates the tragedy sourced directly from Darlene's own testimony. Even with his lawyer categorically denying everything, Darlene's explosive claims remain firmly on the record. This creates the exact tense, heartbreaking backdrop explaining why the victim's own daughter reached her absolute breaking point. Carly told CBS News straight up that her stepdad's timeline is pure fiction. None of his excuses make any logical sense. The woman was an absolute athlete. A fantastic swimmer, actually. So why on earth would she paddle away into the dark, and why grab the keys? The daughter lawyered up incredibly fast, aggressively demanding a completely transparent, scorched earth investigation into what truly happened to her mom. She bluntly told the press her mom wasn't clumsy enough to just tumble over the rail. She hasn't backed down once. What she wants, and what this entire massive probe is stalling for, is the undeniable truth those digital files will finally speak. On her show, Drop Dead Serious, the host coined this brilliant term that perfectly captures the entire forensic approach here. She dubbed it the biometric popcorn trail, or the digital popcorn trail. Think about it, a trail isn't just one smoking gun. It is a massive chain. Every little piece seems completely useless by itself. One pulse check is just math. One satellite ping gives you a dot on a map. A basic pedometer simply shows walking. Connect them all, though, drop by drop, minute by minute, ping by ping. Suddenly you construct a massive, undeniable picture that no single fragment could ever show individually. An ironclad timeline. An unbiased, computer-logged, non-stop chronology proving exactly how a person moved and their exact coordinates. Cops aren't just following one path either. They are actively juggling several digital breadcrumbs at once. You have the physical metrics from the wrist gadget. Every single pulse beat, every step, every location. Drop every splash of water from that entire night of April 4th. Then there is the tech pulled from the soulmate vessel itself, whatever the security cameras caught, if they were actually plugged in the hidden files on those iPads. Every digital footprint tells a story from the GPS tracking and call logs hidden on those cell phones straight down to the frantic text messages Brian fired off to his buddies right after everything went wrong. Then you have those hand-drawn maps he gave the detectives, his recorded conversation with Blaine Stevenson explaining his side of the story, plus the actual data pulled from his personal phone tracking his exact movements during those wild 7 hours he supposedly spent just paddling through the pitch-black ocean. Look, if the guy was actually out there doing exactly what he claims his digital footprint will back him up completely. But if it does not, well, Banfield calls those bad facts. She laid it out perfectly. When your personal story completely clashes with the hard forensics, the breadcrumb trail of your health apps, and the physical evidence, yeah, those are some really bad facts. Horrible facts, honestly. It does not automatically mean someone is lying or planning something sinister, but it definitely highlights a massive glaring gap between a person's spoken narrative and the cold, hard truth trapped inside the electronics. The second that contradiction pops up, the lawyers and the jury have to figure out how to handle it. And right now, detectives are working overtime, just trying to see if that discrepancy actually exists here. If you have been following this nightmare from the beginning, you already know exactly what the police are hunting for behind the scenes. They aren't expecting a single magical smoking gun to just neatly wrap up the entire mystery overnight. Instead, they are digging for basic consistency or a blatant mismatch comparing the survivor's tale against the digital ghost left in the machine. Now that Apple Watch changes the game in a way absolutely nothing else can. Why? Because it literally logged the physical trauma Lynette Hooker's body went through second by second. Forget secondhand accounts or guessing games based on ocean currents and weather reports, because this gadget physically registered, tracked, and locked down precise timestamps of her vitals on the night of April 4th. Assuming she had that device strapped to her wrist when she hit the ocean, and honestly all signs point to, yes, that little piece of tech captured her exact pulse the second she went under. Just think about that for a second. The exact split second she submerged the violent physical shock, her system endured all of it, permanently burned into a server somewhere just waiting for the cops to unlock it. Remember that horrific Nilsson case down in Australia? A tiny 7-minute gap between the victim's initial panic response and their final pulse totally destroyed a suspect's fabricated 20-minute timeline leading up to the murder. The device never spoke a word. It just spit out raw metrics. Yet those silent statistics painted a picture so damning, the killer's alibi fell apart completely, which is exactly the kind of explosive power driving the Lynette Hooker probe today. Did her pulse suddenly skyrocket the moment she hit the waves? And what exactly happened during the agonizing minutes right after? Did the tracker show prolonged physical struggling? Like someone desperately trying to tread water, just like Brian claimed when he last saw her? Or is there a totally different medical reality buried in that chip? The answer absolutely exists. It's sitting right there in the files the tech guys are ripping apart as we speak, though we probably won't hear about it anytime soon. You have to realize that massive cross-border cases dealing with foreign laws and locked tech hardware move insanely slow compared to the 24-hour news cycle. But trust me, the evidence is secured. They recovered the hardware, and the cyber experts are currently doing their thing to extract every last byte. So let's look at exactly where things stand today. Authorities let Brian Hooker walk out of a Bahamian jail cell without any pending charges on April 14th, 2026, after keeping him locked up for about a week. Detectives grilled him over and over again. Eventually, the local island police announced that they only let him go because they coordinated directly with their lead prosecutors. Those prosecutors basically advised the cops to hold off on officially charging him right now until they can dig up some more concrete answers. They can absolutely slap cuffs on him again. The case is far from closed. It's basically just sitting in limbo, waiting for the lab results to drop. Once he got out, Brian hopped on an interview with NBC News claiming he plans to stay on the islands to keep looking for his wife, while his lawyer keeps insisting the guy is completely innocent. Still no sign of Lynette anywhere. Meanwhile, the United States Coast Guard is running their own aggressive federal criminal probe alongside the island cops. And let me tell you, the Coast Guard does not just open criminal files for fun. Having the feds involved suddenly brings a massive arsenal of top-tier forensic labs and serious legal firepower into the mix, way more than the local authorities could ever afford on their own. The police aren't just blindly hoping this device holds a clue. They already know it does. They literally employ hardcore tech nerds whose entire job is ripping data out of encrypted health applications. Plus, they've got the search warrants ready to tear through the hardware itself, the smartphone it's synced to, and every single file uploaded to her private cloud storage. The million-dollar question is what that dashboard actually reveals once they crack it open. We might be in the dark right now, but the digital breadcrumbs are absolutely sitting there, pulse by pulse, pointing toward the truth. Despite the absolute chaos of the arrest, the sudden release, the confusing tech jargon, and two entirely different countries fighting over jurisdiction, Darlene Hamlet has stayed rock solid. Keep in mind, this woman is 76 years old. She literally drove herself straight down to the foreign consulate in Miami just to grab a rush passport, totally determined to fly down there and force someone to look her in the eye and explain what happened. When she gave that interview to Banfield, you could hear this incredible mix of sharp focus and utterly devastating heartbreak in her voice, balancing perfectly on a razor's edge. She admitted that she's basically been bracing herself for this exact nightmare call for years now. Honestly, she confessed that whenever her daughter went back out on that water, she was terrified it'd be their final goodbye. If you could speak to her right now, what would you say? She was asked, and her response was completely gut-wrenching. Just that I love you and I really wish you'd made it back home. She already knew the cops had found the smartwatch, so the second a federal agent called to confirm the news, she instantly felt the massive weight of what that implied. The tracker survived the water. It was actively logging her vitals, and whatever dark secrets exist regarding the night of April 4th are currently trapped inside its memory banks. You know, the tech guys who tear apart crime scenes always fall back on one specific golden rule whenever an investigation gets insanely messy. Because when suspects start changing their tune, eyewitnesses argue over details, and people's flawed memories create completely impossible timelines. Things get muddy fast. Here's the bottom line: computers simply don't care about protecting themselves. But a terrified guy sitting on a boat in the dead of night on April 4th, oh, he's definitely got a narrative he's trying to push. People always find a reason, subconscious or otherwise, to spin the facts exactly how they need them to look. Whether it's pure panic, overwhelming trauma, or just the basic desperate instinct to stay out of a prison cell, humans will always bend the truth. But a piece of wearable tech zero instincts. It absolutely does not care if someone goes to jail. It isn't trying to keep a web of lies from falling apart under pressure. It just relies on basic sensors and a hard drive to blindly log whatever happens, ruthlessly stamping a time on every single event. Then it quietly backed up all those numbers, locally pushed them to a smartphone, and uploaded them to the web, just waiting for a detective with a warrant and the right software to finally ask it for the truth. Ashley Banfield nailed it perfectly when she looked at the camera dead serious and said it best. These smartwatches simply do not lie to us. A ticking clock on a dead woman's wrist might just blow this whole thing wide open. Seriously, the sheer amount of biological data trapped inside Lynette's smartwatch, from her pulse to her exact steps before hitting the water on the night of April 4th, is easily the ultimate smoking gun here. Look, digital forensics don't come wrapped up in some neat little Hollywood bow. Instead, it's all about cold, hard comparison. You take the suspect's story, line it up against the raw metrics, and see if the math actually checks out. But when those numbers clash with the alibi, that spells disaster for whoever's lying. Since you're still tuned in, you realize this nightmare is far from over. Cops are actively digging. Right this second, experts are tearing apart the hardware, pulling every ounce of telemetry they can find. Answers are coming. The minute the truth drops, we're going live with it. Care about getting justice for Lynette? Then do yourself a massive favor and hit that subscribe button immediately, because you absolutely can't miss the upcoming bombshells. Turn your alerts on right now. Things are escalating at lightning speed, and you want a front row seat for the fallout. Need to get caught up? Just check the backlog linked down in the description box. Binge the old videos first if you're lost. For the day one viewers, you already know the stakes. We're staying on top of this, tracking every lead. Just waiting for those tiny silicon chips to finally start talking. Just a quick disclaimer, this video is strictly educational. Everything discussed comes straight from verified public records and official police reports. Keep in mind, authorities haven't charged Brian Hooker regarding his wife vanishing. His legal team continues to completely deny any involvement whatsoever. Any tech specs we mention regarding smartwatch tracking capabilities are just based on standard industry knowledge. These are general facts about how the devices work, not leaked details from Lynette's specific police file. Make sure to keep an eye on verified news channels for the official breakthroughs as police continue working the case. In a world obsessed with speed technology and constant motion, this story reminds us of a deeper truth. Every life is precious and every moment matters. A small device on a wrist may seem ordinary, but in a painful mystery, it becomes a silent witness, capturing movement, heartbeat, and the fragile rhythm of human life. That alone teaches us something powerful. Even when people are gone, the truth still matters, and love keeps searching for answers. What stands out most is not just the technology, but the human heart behind it. A mother refuses to stop hoping. A family holds on to memories. Questions remain, but so does courage. In times of fear and confusion, the search for truth becomes an act of love. This story also reminds us to value safety, responsibility, and the people beside us. Life can change in a single moment, which is why we should never take our loved ones for granted. Say the kind words now. Protect each other now. Treasure the ordinary moments now. Because in the end, the greatest lesson is, this truth may be delayed, but it should never be abandoned, and love, even in the darkest storm, keeps shining.